Good early afternoon. We're live. This is the Blue Plate Special. I'm Andy Andrews. We're glad to have you here with us. What am I seeing on the screen out there?
Talk to Emily.
Is there a different show on the screen? I don't know. I guess there is. Anyway, can you guys hear out there? Okay, we have a whole bunch of studio people in here today, and we're at Wisdom Harbor Studios. And things seem kind of discombobulated, but that's okay. That's my life, discombobulated. But let's quickly recombobulate. We're here at the wharf in Orange Beach, Alabama. Beautiful weather, and seen a lot of people getting their pictures taken there on the escalator statue. Probably make good postcards, I think. But we're glad to have you here. This is a very special show today. We're going to have an idea for society and an explanation for the children. So that's what we're going to do. Matthew, I'm not seeing any names or anything on the monitor. So, do you like the shirt, by the way? The shirt is a Fish Hippie shirt. This is from the Sand Dollar Lifestyles, the huge place there. It's the cornerstone of the wharf. And they have millions of shirts, jillions of shirts. This is just one of them. And we really like the guys at Sand Dollar Lifestyle. So if you go in there and get a couple or 300 shirts or something, just tell them we sent you. We've got a bunch of people here in the studio. Sandra and Tripp from Madison, Mississippi. Hey, you guys. Man, I'm glad my wife is not here today. With you guys from Mississippi and Polly from Mississippi, we would none of the rest of us would get a word in. You know, I mean, that's just like, oh my God. You just think that Mississippi is just like the greatest state in the nation. Yeah, I know, it is. Well, it's the only state that red shirts Miss Americas. That's true. April from Elmira, New York. Where's April? Hey, April, how are you? From Elmira. And Deborah from Atala, Alabama. Hey, all right. Man, that's a double A place you're from. Come to visit double A right here. Jane from Atlanta. Where's Jane from Atlanta? Good to see you. Good to see you. And I hope you drove down. Did you drive? Good. Yeah, because, you know, the airlines, I mean, there's just so much bad weather around everywhere that the airlines just don't seem to be flying full contingents. Sylvia from Georgia. Where's Sylvia? That's you? Okay. What? And so you're from Livonia, Georgia? Oh. We got Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and Rachel from Gulf Shores. Yeah, got a local girl. This is good. Okay, and little M, you doing all right over there? Okay. Matthew, you good? Okay. Here's that coming in like a wrecking ball, loud and clear from Dothan, Alabama. That's Big Bob Woodall. Bob had elbow surgery. I hope you're okay, dude. You know, I mean, it wasn't like an elbowectomy or anything. I mean, they didn't take it out. They just like fixed it. Groves Proctor from Arlington, Texas. We're glad to have you with us. And we had people from all over. You know, now here's somebody, Margaret Davis Haupt from chilly but sunny Northeast Mississippi. Yeah. So, you know, it's like chilly down here today, to me, anyway. I mean, our friends in Minnesota and in the Dakotas, they don't really believe me when I say it's cold. But 40 degrees here is like really, really cold somewhere else. So Willis is from Hope, Arkansas. Brenda Pratt from Clinton, Tennessee. Man, you guys are from all over. Michelle Cromas from Chile, Indiana. Everywhere seems chilly. Do you know, Polly and I went out to eat the other night, and there's from Searcy, Arkansas, Sandra Mendonca, I'm sure, and you shared. Thank you. If you're new here to us, if you're on Facebook, we would really appreciate it if you would just share this, especially this show, okay? Because I think we're going to get into something that you're going to want to share. And so share to your page, and also click the notifications button and turn the notifications on your phone on so that anytime we go live here, you'll be notified. Also, the YouTubers, we're glad to have you with us today. Just click that subscription button, if you will. Make us easy to find next time, and that'll really help us. The LinkedIn people, loosen your tie. We know you're all dressed in suits, and we're glad to have you here. Pam Barrett, hey, from Tennessee. The Twitterverse is also here with their captain, Brian Backen. This is going to be an unusual show because we call it the Blue Plate Special, Lunchtime Learning and Laughter. And I think we do a lot of everything except lunchtime. Even though we have had people sitting out there eating, and I mean, I'll look over at Matt sometimes and he'll have a sandwich in his mouth. Hey, there's the Levine family. I've actually got your book, The Levine Boys Christmas Caroling Adventures. So I enjoyed that book. So you guys are in Farmersville, Ohio, I think. There's George Cosser checking in from the SIP, Mississippi. Yeah. George is from Senatobia. Kate Gustafson from Bay Area, California. And there's Ling somebody from somewhere in China. And Janet Rayburn from Gulf Shores. Okay, so here's what we got. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. You can't stay away from the news. You can't stay away from conversation about the news, it seems like. And other than the everyday stuff that we are faced with, there is a pattern that I have noticed over the past, 10, 20 years, I guess. And this pattern, people talk about it, but I'm not sure that we have had a great grasp on how or why certain things have happened. I think that there is perhaps I hope nobody just like has a cow when I say this, but it seems like a dumbing down of society or kind of a retreat. There's a retreat. People are retreating to tiny bubbles. I remember a number of years ago, we used to think that we lived in kind of a different bubble here in the Southeast. And then there was a time where, we felt like we lived in a bubble in our state, maybe a couple or three states. And then there was a time where Polly and I were sitting out on our back deck, and somebody had said something about what was happening around somewhere, and Polly said, well, we live in our own little bubble here in Orange Beach, and we like our bubble. And, it occurred to me that a bubble is nothing in the world but a thin membrane that exists because of an equal amount of pressure on either side. And when there's more pressure on the outside than there is on the inside, that bubble shrinks. And if there's enough pressure, the bubble disappears. And so a shrinking bubble is is a perhaps a portent of things to come. Deanna Kilpatrick, this is live. This is not semi-live. This is live, just to let you know. And so, as I have kind of watched what was going on and listened to people, one of the things that I have heard is I hear a lot of grandparents, I guess, especially, but parents too, saying, yeah, kids aren't like they used to be. And I'll hear grandparents say, you know, we raised him to do like this, and he married her, and now our grandchildren are not, they don't act like, you know, and you know, if I say something, they tell me, hey, you know, that's your opinion. And people kind of don't know what to say about that. And I think I think the longer we don't think through things, the less cohesive and the less productive they get. And so I read a lot. I read a lot, and I read a lot of history. And one of the things that I read lately, and for a while I've been reading. I read about kings when I can find them, and I think that it's pretty easy to find stuff to read about kings because they kept everything that kings wrote throughout history. You know, I mean, in fact, whatever they said, somebody wrote it down. Whatever they wrote, somebody kept it. If King Henry VIII ate with that fork, you can bet it's in a museum somewhere, and somebody says he ate with that. You know, they kept it, and so you can find stuff that kings write, and I'm particularly fascinated with. Well, and I don't know if you remember this, but I was in either junior high school or high school, and there was a movie, and it was called King Solomon's Mines. And Richard Chamberlain was the Indiana Jones guy, okay? You remember the guy from the Thornbirds, Richard Chamberlain? The Indiana Jones guy, and he was like the guy going after all the treasure in King Solomon's mines. And I was particularly interested in this movie because I knew King Solomon was a real guy. And so that just kind of fascinated me. They would do a movie about that. And, of course, King Solomon, his history says that he was the wealthiest person who ever lived. And there are historians who say he was also the wisest person who ever lived. And so I just remember that particular movie, and then reading the stuff that he has written is very curious to me. You know, because the guy, you know, to be the wisest person who ever lived and the wealthiest person, that's got to be the best anybody turned out. You know, I mean, somebody that was traditionally parented, and I guess he was. His dad was King David, which was Richard Gere. If you're keeping up with the movies, that was Richard Gere. But it was curious to me because reading the stuff that King Solomon wrote, I mean, he writes like a king. You know, it's not like John Grisham or anything. You know, he writes like a king. It's like, do this, don't do this, don't do this, do this, pay attention to this, ignore that, don't even look at that. And so he's all over the map. You know, but it's all stuff that is he's telling to his kingdom. He's telling, and so I read some of this, and some of it, you know, I understand, and some of it when I started reading it, I didn't get it, and then I'd read it again, maybe a few times after reading it, I'd start to get some of that and understand some of that, but it was curious to me how the wealthiest and the wisest guy. First of all, I'm thinking, how did he get that way? Because his dad was David, and usually when kings are, when somebody becomes king, it's because their dad died or somebody killed somebody and put them in place. But David was the father, and then Solomon. But if you read history about David, his place, his kingdom was kind of like an armed camp. I mean, he was a conqueror. They didn't have these wealthy buildings and these beautiful places. And then all of a sudden, in one generation, Solomon's like the wealthiest guy on the planet. And so I'm like, how does this happen? And as I began to think about it and look at this, I realized that it's got to be taxes, all right? Because David would just like conquer, and he like traveled around. But Solomon, all of a sudden, Solomon is in one place. And now he's building this massive building. He's building these huge places, and people from all over the world are coming to join his kingdom. And so I'm thinking that since he's not conquering, it's got to be taxes. All right. And so I'm trying to think, as I'm reading this stuff, why is he telling everybody this stuff? And I'm somewhat skeptical. And so I'm thinking, why am I going to believe, what this guy says? And so here's what I have come up with. I believe that if it's taxes, and that's how he's making money, then he's telling people, I mean, if you read this stuff, he's telling people how to build their business and how to make money and what to do if you're going to lose your money and how to keep from losing it and how to find a spouse and how to act and how to raise your kids. And it's like, I got to thinking that, okay, he's telling these people this because he wants their businesses to be really, really profitable. I'm thinking, even if he's just mercenary, even if you don't care about them, he's wanting their businesses. He's telling them the absolute truth so that their businesses can be great, because the greater the business are, the more the taxes are. Okay? And he's telling them about family stuff because he wants their families to be great, because he knows that if their families are not great, their businesses are not great, right? And so he wants their business to be great, so he wants their families to be great, so they can be more productive in business. And that's, I mean, I'm inserting that. I'm thinking, even if he's just mercenary, even if he doesn't care. And so I'm coming up with a reason that I can believe this stuff and try to figure out exactly what some of these things are that I don't understand. And so as I have read this, I've been amazed at how you can go to the bottom of the pool on some of this stuff. And I think that we ignore this at our peril. One thing he's big on, everywhere he writes, he's talking about the difference in wise people and fools. And he's making a very clear distinction between wise people and fools. And one of the things that I started reading, and I got this exactly, it said, But he started by saying, "These are the writings of King Solomon, David's son. I am writing this to teach my people how to live, how to act in every circumstance." And so, why would he do this? Okay, we just talked about that. That's why he would do this. Now, I think that most people go into their lives. If you ask people what are they after, and you really bear down on them, most people are after just a good life, or they're after money, or pleasure, or recognition. But it's curious that King Solomon made the distinction that if you really want those things, if you want not just one or two of them, if you want all of them, then wisdom is what you should be after. Because he said that wisdom brings a long, good life. It brings riches, honor, pleasure, and peace. And so, when you think of those things, that'd be a great life, wouldn't it? And so he says, your concentration should be on wisdom, not on money, not on pleasure, not on honor. Your concentration should be on wisdom. And he says that the first step in becoming wise is the determination to become wise. I just think that's very interesting, because it's so to the point. That is the truth. I think Zig Ziglar said one time, you got to be specific if you're going to accomplish anything. He said, when Edmund Hillary climbed Mount Everest and they asked him how he did it, he didn't just say, well, I was out walking around. He was specific. And so the first step in becoming wise is to determine to become wise. And he says, here's the fool part. He says, only fools refuse to be taught. And he wrote, if you want better insight and discernment and are searching for them as if you were searching for lost money or hidden treasure, then wisdom will be given to you. Now, I think about that, the determination to become wise, choosing to become wise, choosing to search for wisdom, and to search for discernment, and I think that when you look at that determination to become wise, and when he says to search for wisdom like you would for lost money or a great treasure, and when I think of most of us, we don't intentionally search for wisdom as hard as we search for our car keys when we can't find them. And so I think I can step up my search for wisdom. One of the things that he says that is very very curious to me is, and I marked this when I read it, I went back to it several times. He says that the character of even a child can be known by how he acts. The character of even a child. And he says, even a child. So I guess that means the character of an adult can be known by how they act, but the character of even a child can be known by how they act. So he's obviously saying that how we act that displays our character. And that determination to become wise, there's a determination that somebody has to make to act in a certain way. Acting as a person of character is definitely upstream. That's something that you have to go after. You can't just tread water and just float downstream and become greater and do more. Here's something that I wrote down because I have had a lot of parents through the years come to me and just distraught with an adult child or a young adult child, and I have seen so many tears, and I've heard this said over and over again to the point that it bothered me, and I really had to dig in to figure out what was going on, because when I first started hearing this, our boys were pretty young, and they're 22 and 19 now, but they were pretty young when I first started hearing this. But people would come up to me, parents would come up to me, and they would say, you know, that thing that King Solomon wrote about, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Well, we did that. And now look. And they're just distraught because they feel like they did what they were supposed to do, and they were told that if they did that, it would work, and they have come to the conclusion that it didn't work. And so I really pondered that a bunch as the boys were getting older, and as I would see friends and acquaintances who had, it's almost become a cliche. A family has, 3 or 4 kids, and most of them turn out great, and one of them, it's just off the rails. And they're like, we, raised them at the same dinner table. We told them the same thing and had the same rules, and we don't know what happened. And I think part of it is probably a concentration on the wrong pathway. I talk to a lot of people who say, we just want to raise great kids. We want to raise great kids. And that does not resonate with me, because I think that's low hanging fruit. That's a low goal. I don't think that you really want to raise great kids. I think that what you want to do, and that's 2 different pathways. That's 2 different destinations, and 2 different pathways lead to each. Now, if you raise kids who become great adults, it'll go by that great kid area, okay? But it's it's what King Solomon wrote, and if you look at it very, very literally, I don't think we have literally enough. Now, see, raising great kids is relatively easy if you're paying attention. Now, I mean, there are kids who are off the rails and their parents aren't paying attention, okay? But raising great kids is relatively straightforward if you're paying attention, because we can make them be great kids. I mean, we can make them be great kids. We're bigger than they are and we have all the money. And we can make them be great kids. And so I think it's when they get away from us that we can, I mean, because we make them be great kids, because we can say things like, as long as you live in my house, you will not be jumping off cliffs. As long as you live in my house. And then we're surprised when they get out of our house and go jump off cliffs. I mean, that's what we said. As long as you live in my house, you will not be jumping off cliffs. And if the kid has any brains in his head, you know, he's going to be quiet. He's going to look at you and say, you know, agree. But inside, he might be thinking, I'm not always going to be in your house. And then we're surprised when they move away and they go jump off cliffs. And we're like, well, that isn't what I meant. I didn't mean, you know, I meant for you to understand that's not something that you should do. But that's not what we said. And we didn't have a real conversation about it. We just said, as long as you live in my house, you're not going to do this. And so that's where I'm talking about when I say I don't think that we have taken what King Solomon wrote as literally as we should have, because what he wrote was, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is older, he will not depart from it. Train up a child in the way he should go. He didn't write, make a child do what you want him to do, and when he is older, he will keep doing what you made him do. That ain't what he wrote. He said, train up a child in the way that he should go. And training up a child takes long conversations. You know, we tell teachers a lot of times, we say, you know, we get mad at the educational system. We go, you're not there to tell my kid what to think. You're supposed to teach my child how to think. And that's true. But then the problem occurs when we bring our kids home and then we tell them what to think. I mean, whoever it is telling a child what to think, that's never going to last. Because if we tell a child what to think, as soon as they get away from us, at 18 or 19 or 20, whatever, if we tell them what to think, and as soon as they get away from us, they will begin to test the validity of what we've taught them to think. And they'll be doing it without a net. We're not there to help, to catch them when they fall. But if we train up a child in the way that he should go, if we teach a child how to think, that requires long conversations about why we believe like we believe and how we used to believe this, but then Uncle Kevin said this and it made me think about that, and I had a conversation with him, and you know, one day you're going to have to determine, you know, what you believe about this, but here's what I believe, and this is why I believe it. And see, when we do that consistently, then we have a child who, when he gets away from us, he's already made a lot of critical decisions, and he's equipped to handle the questions that are knocking the legs out of generations of people. And so I really believe that that an explanation about why is critical. We have these manners posters, and these manners posters have yes ma'am, yes sir, please, and thank you. And then there's an explanation written at the bottom. Now, when I grew up, my parents required us to say yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. And it became a habit, and it became something that I didn't get away from. But I was very aware, when I got away from home, that there were a lot of people that didn't do that. And, as I got older and we had our boys learn to do that, there were tons of people who don't do that. And so I would have even people comment on it, and their comments would either be, "Man, those kids have the best manners of anybody ever," or they say, "Yeah, we don't really go in for that. We think that's kind of an opinion," and so for a long time I didn't know what to say. And of course, not my place to say anything, I'm thinking, but as I watch society kind of roll downhill a little bit, and a little bit meaner and less happy and less predictable, I begin to examine some things to really dig in and have a reason for doing it, other than it's my opinion or it's something my parents did. And so I think the yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir thing is a great example to explain. There's a lot of things like this, and these are things that sometimes grandparents will have taught their kids that, but then the grandkids don't do that. And when they say something about it, the parents say, "Hey, Mama, we're raising them like we feel is right, and that's just your opinion." And then Mama hadn't got anything she can say about it, because she just kind of thinks, "Well, I guess that is my opinion, but it's my opinion." But there's no changing. There's no changing, because nobody provided proof of anything, or nobody provided what was in it for the family who did something different. And so the things that are required, that change requires, are what's in it for me, and proof beyond reasonable doubt. Meaning, how does that affect my life? And the proof beyond reasonable doubt is, well, that makes sense. That just makes sense. And so people will change when that just makes sense crosses paths with what's in it for me. And so the yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes or no sir thing, here's how I explained it to a dad of some younger children not too long ago. I said, it's not right or wrong. To not say that is not a sin. And it is not a sin to say yes or yeah. It's not a sin. And so in one way, I guess it could be considered an opinion. But here's why we we did that. And here's, as the boys got older, how we explained to them why they are doing this. And the idea is, you want the best for your children, right? I mean, don't you want the best life? And that includes the best opportunities, that includes the people thinking the best of them. And so we want the best for our children. Okay, well, if you look at, and there's a million things, pants half on, hat backward, yes ma'am, no ma'am. I mean, none of these things are really right or wrong, okay? However, on the yes ma'am, no ma'am thing, I've heard people say it's regional, okay? But it's not really regional anymore, because there is no region anymore. I mean, not with the way our world works today. Everybody knows somebody in California, that from California, they live in Mississippi now. And somebody in Georgia that lives in Washington State, and somebody from Louisiana that's living in New York. And so we're all kind of mixed up and mixed around. And so there's no regional thing. But if you looked at age 40 to 70, just the hiring and firing age in America, and you said, okay, let's take 100% of the people from 40 to 70, how many of those people do you think that it seems just a little disrespectful to them to hear a kid say yeah or no? I mean, it just seems a little disrespectful for them not to say yes ma'am, no ma'am. I mean, what percentage out of 100%, 40 to 70, what percentage would you say it might feel just, that seems just a little, and let's just say 20%? More? Less? What do y'all think? You think more? A little more? Okay. Well, let's say 25%. Okay? And let's say that number of those people just feel like, now here's the thing. I'm not saying they're right. I don't even know who they are. Okay, but I think somewhere between 15 and 25% of people feel like that's just a little bit. Okay, so here's the deal. If there is a reason not to do it, if there's a reason, okay, you have a reason not to do it. But if there's not a reason not to do it, at some point your child is going to go out into the field of corporate combat, and they're going to be competing for jobs, competing for opportunities, competing for influence. And don't you want them to have 100% of people not having any negative thought, not having had a negative thought about them? I mean, when it comes time for them to get letters of recommendation from people in your hometown, I mean, don't you want them to have 100% of people on their side? Because if they have 100% of people on their side, they're going to be competing with people who only have 75 or 80% of people on their side. And trust me, this yes ma'am, yes sir, please, thank you. What we have down here is an explanation of why. In a competitive world, the child who becomes an adult with great manners has a distinct advantage over those whose manners are merely average. They have a distinct advantage. Okay, so I want you to think about this. if that shifts anybody, I've had people say to me, I wish there was something that we could do about it. All right. Well, I have had an idea of something that we can do about it to spread the explanation. And Matt, what was the last thing, the last note I had about that was from Solomon? No, it was after that one. No. After, go down. Oh, is that it? Okay. Here is my idea. I know that a lot of people who listen to this have already raised their kids. And so, and I say I had this idea. I didn't have this idea. Somebody gave me this idea because they told me they had done this. That they got one of these things. Actually, they got two of them, and they had it put up in the school, in their local elementary school. And then somebody else got a couple of them and put them up in a church. And they can also be put up in City Hall or, wherever it is that people walk around. Because this is the part you really want them to see. And so what the person did who got them and put them in an elementary school, he said, around here, it's Alabama or Auburn. And so we put two of them side by side. And so wherever it is that you live, and whatever the colors you want, you guys can order them from the site, and we'll have them done in whatever colors you want. Okay, but that's just an idea on how to get that thought out there that there is a reason, that this is not just an opinion, that there's a reason. And if we can get teachers and guidance counselors and people of influence talking about the reason that you have manners, the reason. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I work with tons of companies, and I know when they're hiring executives. And so I cannot tell you how many times, one of my clients right now is hiring a communications director. And so you put the word out, and they got 20-something applications in, and they narrowed it down to 3. Well, when you narrow it down, and these people that are looking for great positions, when you narrow it down, if somebody's the same gender and the same age and has the same experience, and how do you decide? How do you decide? And when you have 3 people like that, it's generally, when they're all kind of seem level, you're not generally choosing the best because they all seem to be the best. And so you really knock 2 out instead of choosing 1. And you would not believe how many CEOs have told me, I take them to dinner. And I see how they treat each other. I see who walks through the door first. I see who stands up when, a lady comes to the table. I see who is a great conversationalist. I see how they treat the wait staff. I even had one guy tell me, I look to see if anybody salts their food before they taste it, because there is somebody who will make a decision without getting all the facts. I'm telling you, little things matter. And rather than imposing our will on our families and on other members of society, we can explain how to find the best. Okay? You know, let the world go good to great. We're looking at our families and wanting our families to go from good to great to best. And so, there you go. That's it for today. We have a lot more we could talk about, and we will at some point. But thank you guys for hanging with us today. And if you could, you can still share this to your page. And so if or direct people towards a certain part of it. But we'd all like to be part of the solution instead of part of the noise. Thank you guys, and we'll see you soon.